near victory episode right after the Patriots game. Jahmai, your first time on Rush. I'm excited to have you on. And look what you bless us with. A Patriots win 25-22 over the New York Jets.
Yeah, that's right. I guess anytime I come on, the Pats win. It gave me a reason to watch a 1-6 team and really hone in on what they were trying to do. So happy to be here, man. Happy to talk Pats.
Yeah, man, they needed this desperately. We're happy to have you on this as well. 25-22 the final. The Patriots were absolutely reeling. Losers of 6 in a row heading into this game. Drake Maye gets knocked out after the third drive of the game. Jacoby Brissett comes in and put together 2 key drives at the end of this game to close it out and get this victory 25-22. What were your initial takeaways and your reactions when this game went final, Jahmai?
I think one of my biggest takeaways was Drake Maye's play initially. He was looking like the offensive MVP, was carrying the offense as far as I'm concerned. And then the biggest thing after that was Jacoby Brissett coming in, having 2 failed drives essentially, and then finally finding his rhythm again after being out the last couple of weeks with Drake taking over the starting quarterback position. So I like the way that he managed the game. I like the way that he was able to find his footing and make throws when they counted, even though his receivers at different points in times in this contest let him down with some of those drops. Yeah. But he stayed with it. His leadership showed. And as he talked about post-game, I don't want to be cocky, but I'm proud of myself. And he should be, because what a big game for him to be able to come in, considering everything that's happened and the way that, obviously he's not completely absolved. The team was, 4 games below 500 when he was the starting quarterback. Some of those tough games, obviously, that they could have won, but obviously some of those that they could have won as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later in here. But I think that was the biggest takeaway. And then the other thing is the whole big narrative of this team being soft. The way they responded, able to push the goal line plays across and just outman the Jets at different points in time, especially towards the end of the game when they needed a touchdown. To go a 70-yard drive for the victory, that was huge. That's not the sign of a soft team. And they could have easily quit, and this whole thing could have spiraled. They could have been listening to all the noise and just bagged it up, say, hey, we're looking for the first-round pick next year. But no, this team showed up when it counted. They came up with some defensive stops when they needed to. And they also played some of those elite wide receivers that the Jets have. Pretty good games against him, even though, Wilson did pick up some yardage, but I felt like when it counted, they came to play.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you point out, because to me, this was a huge week just for that Patriots locker room and for Jerod Mayo to show a response for him. Because after that loss in London to the Jaguars, he calls the team soft. And then everyone from the outside, like we're talking guys on other teams saying you never say that publicly. Obviously, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, the go-to of the franchise, calling it out, go, soft? That's not a soft roster. And Devin McCourty and Ty Law saying, well, if that team is soft, we want to see the coach do more. You're a reflection of your coach. This team was anything but that. They didn't run the ball really well all game, but when they needed to, they did. Ramondre Stevenson set up on a great punt return by Marcus Jones, punched it in from not too far out for their second touchdown of the game. Then the last 2 drives of the game, 46 yards and 70 yards, a total 10 points, and sealed this win for them. But this is a team that needed to respond. All the attention was on them, all the narratives, everyone calling them soft. And if they lost, which they were on track to, it would have been, well, they didn't run the ball that well. And the Jets running backs did run all over them. Yeah, they covered the kicking game, but it's a team that didn't respond well to a bad team that's reeling in themselves, as is the Jets as well. And now what we've seen from New York, too, is that they've lost 5 in a row. Like, this team looks bad. And it's not a playoff win equivalent. It's not season saving, but it says a lot about the resiliency in that locker room. It says a lot about these players responding well to Jerod Mayo, where we heard the leaders in that locker room say, look, he called us soft to our face, and he's right. We are soft. We don't care. But for them to respond the way they did with a team that is reeling, and what you just wanted to see was competent football, and they showed that today. Didn't turn the ball over, played well enough on special teams, and took advantage of the opposition giving them opportunities. Greg Zuerlein missing an extra point. A Christian Elliott sack late in the game on 3rd down, pushing the Jets back, and then Greg the Leg pulling that field goal try where the Patriots flip it around to get 3 points out of that themselves. These key moments in the game where they needed to step up, they did. And you mentioned it too. We have to talk about it. Drake Maye gets knocked out of the game with concussion protocol. He finished that drive, but went into the locker room and never came back out. Jacoby Brissett stepped in. Jahmai, the next 2 drives were 3 and outs. The first 5 drives with him in the game, 39 yards, 0 points in 5 drives. Their last 2 26 plays, 116 yards, and they get 11 points out of it, including that 2-point conversion at the end. When they need to step up the most they did, and that's just what you want to see from a football team. Was it pretty, Jahmai? No. But they won, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, and especially coming off of this week. Like, it was a big talking point. It was big-time fodder for talk radio. You're talking about your team is soft, something that you come publicly and you say on a podium is one of those things, as you talked about, it's kind of taboo. But this is who Jerod Mayo is and who he's shown us to be. He's one of the most transparent coaches in the National Football League. So you can't really fault him for that, because you cannot now put him inside this box when everybody's been praising the transparency and his, the lightness that he brings to the head coaching job in Foxboro after 20-plus years of Bill Belichick leading the franchise. And really, I would say maybe his last 10 or 12 kind of started to turn a little bit salty because, if you had a conversation with Bill, it's not what you see on a podium on a Monday or, a Wednesday when you're talking about install week for the next opponent. So a lot of it was for show, but getting back to Jerod Mayo, I'm glad that he not only stuck to his guns, but he stayed true to who he was. And now he has an opportunity to use this as they continue to try to build this foundation for years to come. Because as you talked about, they're not talking about Super Bowl run this year. This is a team that's in a transition, trying to build a foundation. They got the number 1 overall pick. They got the quarterback in Drake Maye, who's going to be here for years to come. They're going to put some more pieces around this team. But this is a moment in a football season where you look back and say, hey, we didn't play our best in London. I thought it was a soft performance. But now you guys listen to me when I say you got to finish plays. You got to play tough. You got to win battles in the trenches. You got to do your 111. Now he can go back and be like, you see, when we get it done, when we do the things, we focus on our keys. Now this is the result that you guys are going to see on Sundays. It's going to end up in a victory.
And it's a big performance with no Kyle Duggar on the back end, one of their best players on defense, one of the few guys they still have healthy. Josh Uche was inactive as he's been in the circles and whispers of possibly being a guy that's traded before the deadline.
Yeah,
no Daniel
scratch. A little bit of a surprise, right?
It is, but with his contract, his skill set, and he's been a guy that really hasn't translated that well for this defense. The last 2 weeks, 0 pressures, and he's getting pass rush snaps. If they can deal him for a team that would need him, like a Detroit Lions that need a pass rusher, if he gets a draft pick back, I think it's big because he's also a guy that's on a rental deal. No Daniel Ukawale as well. But I'm with you, Jahmai. Like, strange, healthy scratch. That's a team that's telling you they're selling. And again, for them to respond like that, like, all right, well, they're giving up on us. They're going to trade away Uche, who's one of our best pass rushers. But they show up in a winnable game against an opponent that it was basically a staring contest of 2 bad football teams. But guess what? When it mattered most and the pressure was on, they pulled through. Jacoby Brissett, 15 for 24, 132 passing yards. He got 90 of those passing yards in the fourth quarter. He had that long scramble, 3 big plays on the fourth quarter drive. Long completion to Hunter Henry, 14-yard scramble, I believe. Then that 34-yard completion over the middle to Keyshawn Boutte, overcoming his receivers with a lot of drops. This is a team that responded well, and that's what you wanted to see from them,
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, the receivers, there was a period in time there where I was like, these guys get paid to catch the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, Keyshawn Boutte, certainly a bounce-back effort from him because he was booting the ball, no pun intended, all over the field and dropping them. And he had hands like feet for a moment there. But came up big on that last drive, the 70-yard drive, to be able to lead to Ramondre Stevenson punching it in and then the subsequent 2-point conversion to extend that in case the Jets were able to come back and kick a field goal. So there was a lot of big moments that this team can look to as they continue to go on in their year. And, it's funny because there was a lot of talk about the Jets, and this was a key point in their season where this was when they had to try and get it together if they wanted to push towards the playoffs. But obviously, divisional opponents, they're tough. It sometimes is almost a toss-up. So it's tough to sweep a team within the division. The Jets got the first one. But to come back in Foxborough is still a tough place to play and beat a team on any given Sunday, as they say, is a difficult task. So I'm not really surprised that they lost this game. But all the focus and attention was on the Jets and what they were trying to do. And to be able to not only snatch the victory for them, but had them reeling afterwards. Aaron Rodgers postgame was saying, we've been in the darkness. He's so philosophical with it. Who knows what he's going through? But they also got the Houston Texans next week. That's not a walkthrough for them. So I don't understand how they thought that this team was going to turn it around. I think the Patriots now can kind of build some momentum. They're playing the Tennessee Titans next week. that's a team that's a winnable game again. They obviously lost one earlier in the year to the Miami Dolphins, 15-10, another game that they should have had. So you start to look at some of these things and you start to project the schedule, what it can be, and you start to feel a little bit better about it because maybe some of those pieces come back. Kyle Duggar, some of those run-stopping pieces, even though they probably are going to be selling some here with the trade deadline approaching in a couple of days. I think this is a team that can still, they've already this is halfway to last year's win total or something like that. So
yeah, they're at 2 wins. They got 4 last year.
Exactly. So I'd like to see them surpass that possibly and kind of build some momentum and continue to build that foundation for this season because next year it's going to be big.
And you point out for the Jets what it means, like how hard it is to pull off a sweep, but we can't sweep it under the rug that the last time these two teams met, the Jets absolutely embarrassed the Patriots. They won 24-3, but that was a game where everyone's going, oh, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's an MVP again. He's vintage. He's back. They kept him contained. He was never really in rhythm. Garrett Wilson was great. Devontae Adams was kept out of check. The running backs were getting a lot of volume and were chipping away. But it simply was this Patriots team playing tough when they needed to. And that's what you just want to use about a team. And I'm not going out of my way to say they're tough because of the soft comments, because that's what they were. Whether they were called soft or not, that's what showed up big for them. All right, let's bring in Keagan Stiefel. He's out at Gillette Stadium. He was there for post-game sound. Let's bring him into Foxboro Rush because that's the guy that was there in the locker rooms. He was at the podiums. He was hearing them. Keagan, you heard Maye and I talk about this 25-22 win, but what jumped out to you from what you saw from that Patriots team today?
Yeah, I mean, if you were looking for a response, I don't know if you could have got a better one. Not just with a win, you see 25-22 back in the win column, huge thing, but the resilience. And that's a word we heard a lot in post-game, whether it was Jerod, Keon White, Kayshon Boutte, whoever you talked to, the word resilient came up. And I think you saw individual examples of that throughout the game. Kayshon Boutte, like Jahmai mentioned, couple drops to start. You're paying this guy. This is the guy who earlier this week came out and admitted that he started demanding the football. He needed the ball more because he was making plays. And then he drops his first 2 targets. And you're thinking, oh, Jesus, this is going to go straight downhill. But it doesn't. He bounces back 2 huge catches on the game-winning drive and really shows that he can be relied on late in games when the quarterback needs somebody to throw the ball to. He can be that guy. Drake Maye gets knocked out of the game early. Jacoby Brissett comes in. It's not perfect, but he does a good job down the stretch, and he's able to help them get a win. No matter where you looked, Kyle Duggar, like you mentioned, George, out. Del Pettis is stepping up. Jalen Hawkins. Jonathan Jones, who is not a safety by trade. He's done a little bit in the past. He comes in. He's playing a little bit of safety. People are doing not what they're typically asked to do, but what they need to help the team get a win. That was a tough win. You saw it down at the goal line, 1-yard run to win the game. You need a yard. Everybody in the world knows you're going to run it. Can you get it? They did. So if there's nobody better in New England to be right now than Jerod Mayo, because I think what he said last week very clearly got through to his team, and they stepped up when he needed them to step up.
Yeah, some vindication from Mayo this week, certainly going into this week. But also, I think we all use the phrase like doing what they needed to. This is certainly probably the overarching theme for this victory, Keagan. And I think George and I both gave kind of our key takeaways. What is some things that stood out to you about this week's Patriots victory, the biggest takeaway?
So this is me plugging Nesson.com and the articles that I think my team, everybody on the team that I'm on does a great job. But, before the week coming in, I was thinking the Jets pass rush, they're getting Hassan Reddick back. And that's a guy who very clearly is looking to get some numbers and get paid this offseason. So I thought there's going to be some opportunity here for them to run the ball, not just, in the typical run game, you're handing the ball off to Ramondre Stevenson, but for Drake Maye to use his legs. He looked like Drake Vick out there for the first quarter of the game. 3 rushes, 46 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, that was huge. And then he gets knocked out, and you have to completely change your offense.
Yep.
When Drake Maye's in the game versus when Jacoby Brissett's in the game. They're 2 different quarterbacks. I don't think they could be more diametrically opposed in terms of how they play football. Drake can move. He's an athlete. He likes to play off schedule. Jacoby Brissett, the second things get off schedule, throw the ball away and let's live to see another down. So in the second quarter, you saw Alex Van Pelt kind of struggled to figure out how he would translate things back to what they were doing in the early portion of the season. And then in the second half, they come out, 3 scoring drives out of, I believe it was 6 drives, so 50% with a backup quarterback. I think the resolve from the offense was huge. They came into the game with one plan. They were forced out of it, and then they had success with their backup plan. And for a team it's a bad football team. This is a bad roster. But for a team to be able to do that, that shows the resolve and the resiliency that they were talking about after the game.
They easily could have quit.
That was winning football. That was they had some winning football traits, kind of going back to this foundational stuff that we keep talking about, George.
Right? Like, big, long return by Marcus Jones. Sets him up with a short field. Boom. Ramondre Stevenson, his first rushing touchdown of the game. Miss a field goal on one end by the Jets. They come in on the other end, just get close enough, get in field goal range, and nail it. And then you mentioned the 2 big catches by Kayshon Boutte. That's what you want to see from a football team. I had them charted 16 targets, 6 drops for the Patriots wide receivers today. And maybe one of those, I'm being a tough grader on the Pop Douglas drop. But Jacoby Brissett kept going back to them. Hunter Henry stepped up when he needed to. And when they had to do it the most, and you mentioned it, both of you guys have said it, everyone in the world knew they were going to run the ball 4th and inches from the half-yard line, maybe less. What are you going to do? They give it to Ramondre. He doesn't fumble it, and he punches in, and they get the win. This is a team that could have quit the second Drake Maye was ruled out of the game because he was their entire offense. He had scrambles 11, 17, 18 yards, but they stuck together, and that's what stuck out to me about this one. Keagan, what did you hear, whether in the locker room or at the podium, that jumped out to you from this team?
Yeah, I mean, other than Devon Godshaw being America's sweetheart, he's become everybody's favorite person to talk to after the game. He said, yeah, we saw it. Rodgers can't run. I could have outran him and got him out there. I weigh 150 pounds more. Like, talking, and he had every right to. They won the game, so he was talking his mess. But I think, and I mentioned it earlier, but the resiliency thing, because I think the players did take the soft comment personally, whether they admitted it in the media or not. I think all of them felt some sort of way about it, and the question was, are they going to allow this to have a negative effect on them, or are they going to turn things around and let it motivate them? And I think you saw it. And we heard Austin Hooper, backup tight end, he's playing about half the offensive snaps. And he came out and said, he was like, I don't think everybody liked it, but the way the tight end room looked at it was, this is a challenge. And are you going to respond to the challenge, or are you going to prove him right? And we don't have to prove him wrong. We don't have to look at it that way, but we have to prove ourselves right, that we are playing the right way. We are doing the fundamental things that we need to do to help the offense be successful. Earlier in the week, Drake Maye said the wide receivers for the love of the game routes, when your job essentially is to run as fast as you can down the field, knowing you're not going to get the ball, but to open things up for a teammate. They weren't doing that. And today they did do that with a backup quarterback in there when they were trailing, going down to try to win the game. These guys stepped up, they did what was asked of them from the coaching staff, and they found success. And I think this could be a big turning point for them, where you've seen it work now. And earlier in the season, you were doing the right things against Seattle, and then the coaching staff messed it up at the end of the half and the end of the game. This way, this game, they listened to the coaching staff, and it worked. So now they're more inclined to start listening. If they need us to do this, clearly they know what they're talking about. It can help us go get a win. So I think this could be a big thing moving forward. Obviously, they have to build on it. But like Jahmai mentioned earlier, you're playing Tennessee next week, so rattle off a couple wins in a row, and this team can be feeling pretty good about itself.
Yeah, so at Tennessee next week, obviously question marks about Drake Maye's availability going out with the concussion here in the first half. So not entirely sure what's going to happen with him. It didn't look like a major blow, like some of those shots that knock guys out, but anytime you're getting hit in the back of the head, obviously – right. Some of those things, like even you think about in boxing, they call it a rabbit punch. It's illegal. So guys don't get hit back there because it causes a lot of damage and can be very hurtful, which we've seen, obviously, him go out with a concussion. But Jacoby Brissett comes in this game, leads them to victory. I'm curious, two things. Could we see him as a starter next week? And also, what kind of was the reception when he was entering this game as a quarterback? Because I'm not sure if it came off the same as I listened on the telecast, but it sounded like there were some boos coming down.
There were a lot of boos. It was about everybody in the stadium that wasn't there for work was booing.
Okay, so my team messed up.
No, CBS did a great job with the audio today. It was loud, yeah, and you heard a lot of. It wasn't like boos, like, oh, we're pissed off because we have to see this guy. It was just like, oh, not again. We've gone through this so many times, and I feel bad for Jacoby because he came out and he's going out there to try to do his job as the backup quarterback, and they didn't even give him a chance before they booed him. But obviously, it worked out well for him. In terms of the first question, do we see him next week? The NFL is very, very cautious with these concussions, even more so than they have been in the past, even more so than last year. I think Tua Tagovailoa's situation has put a microscope on it. So I would imagine it'll be damn hard for Drake Maye to get out of it in a week. I don't think any players have this year, from Sunday to Sunday, made it back. So I would imagine Jacoby Brissett's your starter. It gives Maye time to obviously get healthy, but then start preparing for a game. If you make the decision early in the week that, this is Jacoby's week, you're going to be inactive, Joe Milton will be our backup next week, it doesn't only give him time to heal, but maybe start preparing for the week after, because they're going to go back to him as soon as he's healthy. It's just a matter of when and if he can come off the concussion or get out of the protocol.
Yeah, Jerod Mayo saying after the game he saw him at halftime. He wanted to go back in because he's a competitor. Obviously has to go through protocol, and they're looking forward to getting him back. We will see. That's a thing, that everything's magnified, even with Tua making his return this past Sunday for them. Interesting, the boos rain down. I understand it, but it's not like Drake Maye was benched and then Jacoby was brought in. Like, the guy had a concussion. Right. What else do they want him to do? Like, do they want to trot out Marcus Jones at quarterback and just run a wildcat? But I understand it.
For the fans to come to their defense, it's a little tough. There's no announcement like, hey, guys, Drake Maye has a concussion. They have no idea. Most people are on Twitter, but not everybody is. A guy my dad's age, his buddy down in Union, whatever number, he's not going to know that Drake Maye's hurt until after the game and he watches TV. So I'll come to his defense, only just this one time.
All right.
Okay. Well, yeah, I thought that was pretty peculiar, but to your point, it was no announcement, and even on the telecast, they were also wondering about what was going on, so it wasn't reported until later. So I kind of understand. People may have thought that this was just a quarterback switch, but the offense was moving efficiently. So if you're even a casual football fan,
of all time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So very strange, But I guess it's all not rainbows and butterflies, even though they did win the game. They really didn't put up the yards on the ground as you thought maybe would be as much. I mean, right. I think, what was it? Ramondre Stevenson, under 50 yards rushing. He did find the end zone, obviously caught the 2-point conversion, but 5-6 games, 82 yards rushing or less at 151, which is the anomaly at Miami. But what do you think about this Patriots run game? How do they get this going and get it going where it's getting a lot of yards and kind of being able to control the game in that way?
I would come here with ideas, but I think the Patriots have exhausted all of their options. Lessida Smith, who they signed off of Green Bay's practice squad earlier this week, he was playing fullback, and Jaheim Bell was playing fullback. And on the touchdown, they brought in 2 eligible offensive linemen to get an extra push. They're doing everything they can. I don't know why it worked so well early in the season, and it's fallen back to the way it is. Ramondre Stevenson has been very clear in the fact that he prefers a power run game. He doesn't like the zone read stuff. He doesn't like, gap schemes. But that's what they run now. So he's going to have to get used to it, because you can't just, in the middle of a game, switch your offense because your running back likes it more. So I think he'll have to get better with that. He'll also have to get healthy. He's been dealing with an ankle for going on a month now. Antonio Gibson is really the only backup that's getting any carries. JaMychal Hasty does when Ramondre is not playing. So I think really just the fact of the matter is they need to block it up better. Some continuity on the offensive line will help. This week was the first week all season they've had an offensive line grouping that they'd already used. They went 7 for 7 and changing things out. So a little bit of continuity will help. And really it just comes down to, be a tough football team, block it up. Go get 3 or 4 yards a pop. They can't afford the 5-yard losses like we saw today. If you can eliminate that, they'll be all right.
Yeah, it was a lot of positive plays, especially. It's just literally just move forward. Don't go backwards.
Right.
It was Vidarian Lowe, Michael Jordan, Ben Brown, Mike Onwenu, and DeMontre Jacobs. Probably after my favorite week of getting quotes from wide receivers not named Terrell Owens or Chad Ochocinco this past week. Anything good come from the wide receivers today, Keegan, after all those drops and just their poor performance?
No, I was very disappointed. We only talked to Kendrick Bourne and Kayshon Boutte. Boutte had a little bit of, he said any ball that touches his hands he should be able to catch. But that was more him saying, the drops are unacceptable. I need to fix that. It wasn't really I'm the best wide receiver on the planet despite the drops, which I think what some people might have expected. So
right.
I think the messaging from Alex Van Pelt and from Kendrick Bourne earlier in the week might have gotten through, where you don't have to say everything you're thinking. You can go out there and they can ask about the drops, and you can give them the answer that will cause the least amount of trouble. And I think that might be what they're doing. You can't knock them for it, because it was a circus this week down at One Patriot Place for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed. I mean, this is just his second week back. Correct me if I'm wrong, for Kendrick Bourne, but I feel like he should be more featured in this offense. He had his opportunities, obviously a few, and had a lot of drops, but just 3 targets for him and no catches.
Yeah,
where has he gone in his production?
I don't blame you for thinking it was his second week. This was his 4th week back. So,
oh my God.
In terms of being worried about his knee, those should be gone. You've been in the system for a month. I think what we're finding is with that spot in the offense, that Z, if you want to look at it that way, but really it's just a backside receiver who you're on your own, over on the weak side of the ball. They haven't been able to get it going. It was Jalen Polk earlier in the year. He obviously, there's the big stat, 30 whatever targets. He has 11 catches. Kendrick Bourne, he had 3 targets today, 0 catches. So I think it's that spot in the offense more than the players themselves. Obviously, if they had Devontae Smith out there, they'd be all right, but they don't. So that's another thing that they have to figure out on the offense, where the quarterback, all their reads are really to the left side, or to the strong side. So when they do make the switch, it's blanketed coverage. You've got a safety over the top. It's really difficult. So another thing that they're going to have to change on the offense if they want to get these guys going. Kendrick Bourne is too good of a receiver to not be having an impact. He did have the one drop today. I'll say that ball was catchable. He was interfered with a little bit by Sauce Gardner, but that ball is catchable. So in the limited opportunities you do get, if you catch the ball, maybe you'll get some more.
Got to pull through. Hey, what stood out to you about the defense, Keagan? Yes, Aaron Rodgers threw for 233 yards. Yes, both Breece Hall and Braylon Allen combined for 112 yards on the ground. Stack that all together, that's a lot of success for the key pieces on this offense, along with Garrett Wilson popping off. But what stood out to you about this Patriots defense that was without a lot of key guys and stepped up when they needed to?
Yeah, we say it every week. Christian Gonzalez is the man.
Yeah.
He shut down Devontae Adams, and I don't know how many cornerbacks in the NFL can do that, let alone have. 2 targets. I think he had 1 catch. It was the last play of the game. They were playing off coverage, just trying to keep everything in front of him to end the game. The stat sheet will say 1 catch on 2 or 3 targets for 16 yards. It was blanket coverage. Couldn't do anything when they actually had Gonzalez out there. They had to change things up because Marcus Jones really couldn't keep up with Garrett Wilson. So they ended up putting, bracketing coverage on Adams and changing things up a little bit. So he did have more catches than you'll see there. But Christian Gonzalez, one-on-one, if you need to stop a guy, you've got the guy to do it. So you've got a building block. And then I'll say at linebacker, Christian Ellis is a guy who's taken a lot of flack in recent weeks just because the linebacking crew as a whole without Juwan Bentley's been terrible. He's stepped in and taken on a little bit more every week, and he exploded this week. 9 tackles. He had a sack, a tackle for loss, multiple pressures. Having a guy in the middle of your defense that will just make the play that is in front of him is huge, and they have that in him. So they found their middle linebacker moving forward. I think you'll see a lot more of him. They'll try to move him around and give him opportunities to make plays because he is a playmaker. He's their most athletic guy back there, and he did a great job this week.
Yeah, the ugliest play we saw for Christian Ellis today was that his coverage in Breece Hall, but Breece Hall is going to do that to a lot of middle linebackers in the NFL where he drew that DPI. You mentioned that Jerod Mayo was pointing out that Christian Ellis. Any comments you hear about Alex Van Pelt and the job he did today? Because we saw, when Drake Maye scrambled for that score, it looked like it was like a handshake with the feet between Jerod Mayo and AVP. I don't know what it was, but you saw how elated they were that we've seen game by game Drake Maye do more. He did more with his legs today, albeit he had just 3 drives to work with.
Yeah, we don't get to talk to the coordinators after the game. It would be nice if we could, because I would have asked about that's the worst handshake I've ever seen in my life.
It was so confusing.
What was that?
It was that. I wish I would have asked Jerod. I was only in half of his press conference, but that's something that we need to get to the bottom of. I might have to drive back down this week and ask that question. But in terms of what he's doing, I think the in-game adjustments have been an issue for him, specifically like in quarter from drive to drive.
Yeah.
At halftime, they were very clearly able to adjust. They came back out and they ran a competent offense in the second half, which I don't think anybody expected after the second quarter, where they literally punted a possession. And I was in favor of that because you got a new quarterback in there. You're changing up your offense. Let's not push. You're still in the game at that point. Let's not make it a disaster. But, you would hope that with your offensive coordinator, you wouldn't have to punt on possessions because you don't trust him to make the right decision.
Yeah, it was still them getting the ball, minute 51 left in the half. And then Jerod Mayo said we lost our quarterback. It's against the locker room. But anything from the players, that's why I asked about AVP. Anywhere from the players jump out mentioning AVP's game plan or maybe how the offense was?
No, I mean, because the prevailing thought coming out of the game was they had to change on the fly. And you would think that comes back to the offensive coordinator. But it was really just, we as the players were making mistakes and we had to adjust to that and just be better. A lot of self-reflection. And we talk about Alex Van Pelt. He said that earlier this week. He said, we have to internalize our thoughts and not share them with the media, essentially. Like, not everybody needs to know what you're thinking. And they did that. So, at the very least, they're listening to what he's saying during the week. You can trust that they're hearing what he's saying.
Yeah, if they're thinking of praising, they're not doing it. What did you make of Jacoby Brissett with the chip on his shoulder in the postgame presser, Keegan?
Yeah, he has every right to have a chip on his shoulder. And he didn't play well. Like, him losing his job was a result of him not performing well. So I don't think he's blaming anybody but himself, but you're going to have a chip, whether it's being pissed off at yourself or being mad at the decision, whatever it might be. If that's what he needs to go out there and play well, if there's one thing I'll say about Jacoby Brissett, he's a fantastic teammate. You see it in and around the locker room. You see it out on the field. He'll be willing to do what he needs to do to help the team win. But now it's on his shoulders to actually perform. It's a lot easier to do that when you're the backup quarterback and you're just giving guys pats on the butt. But now it's time to go out there and perform. And he'll take care of the ball. We know that about him. He won't put it in harm's way. He'll run the offense effectively in terms of what they're asking him to do. He'll do it. It's the physical stuff that always comes back. So, can he take advantage of this opportunity? Maybe show something on tape for next year, go get himself another job. We'll see. But, I'll never have a bad word to say about him just in terms of the way he operates, because he really does. He takes everything in stride, and he does a great job.
Perfect. Hey, he's Keagan Stiefel of NESN.com. Keegan, appreciate you hopping on Foxboro Rush. Make sure to go to NESN.com to get his full coverage. Keeks, thanks for taking the time, man.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Jahmai, I want to get into the comments from Jacoby Brissett. He had two key ones. Like, he stepped in. He played big. We gave him credit. One was about the team celebration. He said, quote, "It's exciting. Winning in the NFL is hard. I know y'all don't think that," speaking to the media. Then he had another one. Yeah. "I don't look at it as redemption. I look at it as a testament to me believing in myself and not y'all." Again, talking to the media. Look, I love it. Whatever gets you to wake up in the morning and inspire you, take it, internalize it, and churn it out the way he did. Jacoby Brissett lost his starting job because he was playing to not lose games instead of win games. And his offense got away from him. And also, Alex Van Pelt didn't do him any favors, like fumbling away that Dolphins win. I did like hearing this from Jacoby Brissett. It just makes his team that much more fascinating and interesting, though. Like, even in a win where it was ugly, there's still something coming out of that locker room or that podium, or is having a scratch in our head a little and going, okay, all right, we hear where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, Keegan mentioned how these guys had to, internalize their thoughts, but the self-praise was there today, and you could appreciate that from Jacoby Brissett, saying how he was proud of himself. Obviously, I mean, you walk into a situation where you're in the stadium and you're getting booed before you even take a snap. Obviously, people not understanding what was going on, but to be able to perform in that situation after those first two drives, because a lot of people, just like myself and yourself probably included, thought the same, and the Patriots would have found a way to lose this game. To be able to bear down, find his way to lead the team to victory was pretty huge for him. But I think, the comments about, not y'all and all this stuff, like, I think naturally, just like, especially in football, because it's such a highly scrutinized sport and they play once a week, it's kind of naturally adversarial between the players and members of the media or the press. But I think it's because it gets conflated. They think everybody's the same. And a lot of these narratives are being spun from a national broadcast. This is what they watch. This is not what everybody's necessarily talking about. So I think there needs to kind of have a distinction for what the two things are. But that's neither here nor there. But I think that kind of went into kind of some of Jacoby's thoughts, because people were thinking he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the game at that particular time, calling for that change, calling for Drake Maye to be in there, because all the other rookies around the league were playing well. And you think about what Jaden Daniels was doing with the Washington Commanders, and he was after Drake Maye. So you're like, what do the Patriots have? They have to find out eventually. So it was this whole, we're sticking to the plan, this whole thing, and nobody knew what the plan was until the plan was enacted. So I think, part of that was, kind of that narrative being spun about the Patriots, who they were. A lot of that fell on his shoulders because he was not playing good football. This game, this was him changing the narrative, which is great because you control the keys, and the conversation will be surrounded about how you play. So now they can go into next week thinking, hey, Jacoby played a pretty good game there, made some passes where now the narrative is the receivers kind of let him down. If they can shore these things up, maybe they can win again next week in Tennessee. So, or against the Titans. So I think we'll see what happens there. But yeah, the comments, it's always funny when players start talking about, not you guys, because it's like, the job of the football press is to assess the game, write about it, and ask about things that were pivotal moments. And obviously that's how the stories are shaped by team plays, and I think they got to understand that.
Yeah, I love the classic, like every athlete be like, I don't read it, I don't hear it, I don't pay attention to the media. You hear those comments like that. It's like, you guys pay attention, and it's fine. Whatever gets inspiration. But to the point of Jacoby Brissett, that final drive, they went 71 yards. He threw for 53 yards. He scrambled for another 14. Like that is the offense. But do the quick math. At 67 total yards that he accounted for on that game-winning drive, that go-ahead drive late in the game, and the big-time throws he had to Kayshon Boutte. Also, what do you think of Jerod Mayo? Finally, he was asked about the soft comments, and he said, quote, I don't think I've ever questioned the resilience of the team. Bless you, my friend. We have a room full of guys with the mentality. Oh, you're good. It's a podcast. We have the room full of guys with the mentality that you have to change the page every day. The resilience is big. He kind of gave a nothing burger at the end of, every practice, every game. But that's a coach that's beaming with pride that I was at this podium last time. I said we were soft across the board. Now we're talking about being resilient and responding to adversity in a great way.
Yeah, no, I felt like it was, and you got to excuse me, I'm getting over a cold here, but yeah, it sneaks up at the wrongest times. But yeah, it was one of those moments for Jerod where he can finally kind of bask in the glory of his moment, because spotlight had been on him this week, obviously, because of those comments. It's not something, as we talked about, that we hear coming from a head football coach, especially when you're leading grown men. So to me, when you're being called soft, just as an athlete coming up, that's like a personal challenge against you. So you heard Keagan mention how Austin Hooper was like, hey, we're not going to try to prove these guys wrong, but prove them right. Like, we can be tough. We can be hard-nosed. We can be a winning football team. So I think Jerod's comments kind of did what he expected them to do and challenge his team to try and reach another level. So he's feeling good off that this week. And I like the fact that he kind of got Belichick in there too a little bit, and switched the focus to, the New York Jets, and said he wasn't going to address those comments and wanting to talk about what the team did this week and obviously what they got to go for next week against the Tennessee Titans. But he's an interesting coach, and it's great really to listen to him talk every week, because he understands how this quote unquote game works, right? Every week that he's having these conversations with the press, but also he's finding ways, I feel like now, to kind of sneak his message in there. And, as you talked about, these guys read everything, they hear everything, they listen to it. And if it's not them, it's a family member or a friend or somebody who's paying attention to it. But it always gets back to the person that it was intended to. And I think Jerod has used the media, the press, as an avenue to deliver his message, and he did it effectively this week.
Yeah, he certainly did. And you point out, that's what I love too. Earlier in this week, you're expecting a lot of answers about soft, and he just kept saying, on to the Jets. We're on to the Jets. We're now focusing on the Jets. It's like, all right. So he picked up a thing or two from his predecessor. Hey, we've spoken about it. Let's address it. Next week, the Patriots head to the road. They're at Tennessee. The Titans lost on Sunday 52-14 to the Detroit Lions, where the Lions look like the best team in the NFL. But this is a winnable game for the Patriots with Drake Maye, with Jacoby Brissett, because this is a Titans team that can't stop the run, isn't great defensively, and offensively, they have huge questions at quarterback, just like the Patriots do on who's starting. Does this change your outlook for what the Pats can do on the road at Tennessee?
No, I feel like the way I feel right now, I'd like them to go in there and get a victory. If they can take care of the football, they can play complementary football, they can run the ball, they can also have an effective passing game. And if they can kind of do some of the things, and the thing I think I didn't mention was Keagan talked about how they had to reshape the offense, and it's completely different when you got Jacoby Brissett leading it as opposed to Drake Maye. But I felt like today, at least, Jacoby was able to do some of the things that we see from Drake and extending drives, being able to get out of the pocket and escape and pick up some positive yards. So if he can do that at a minimum to what he did today, I feel like it's going to be good because there's going to be some breakdowns. We finally saw some continuity with this offensive line. This could be the third week going into where this group has been all together again. That remains to be seen. We'll find out. But I think this Tennessee Titans team, you got to beat them while they were down. They just got smacked by the Detroit Lions, who I feel like right now are the favorite to win the NFC. In my book, being a player that last season and falling short to the 49ers. But I think this would be good for this team to go out and then, as we talked about, continue to build those winning habits. And this is the type of things that make a team come together and can lead them into their future if they can go into Tennessee and get a big road win. But this is a winnable team. I mean, Mason Rudolph is playing quarterback. He's another journeyman, college player, but not so much in the professional ranks. And I feel like they can expose some of those things. And he mentioned Christian Gonzalez. I really like this kid. I mean, he can shut down an entire side of the football field, always taking on the challenge of their number one receiver. Calvin Ridley put up 130-plus yards this week. But if you put Christian Gonzalez on him, you can kind of cut that number in half or maybe even eliminate it. I don't think he found the end zone as well. So at least my game plan will be going into this week, kind of shut down some of those top options, and then you can neutralize this Tennessee offense.
Yeah, in offense, we've seen struggle. I think that's a great point on what Christian Gonzalez did on Devontae Adams. You bet he'll do the same to Calvin Ridley, who's now their number one with DeAndre Hopkins now in Kansas City. They'll lean on their guys. They got to lean on the studs they have. To me, this was a winnable game, especially with Drake Maye, quarterback, heading into that matchup at Tennessee on the road. We'll see what happens this week leading up. But to the point of you have to switch an offense midway through the week, if they get some clearance, if they get an idea of who their quarterback will be on Sunday, that is a whole week of prep, either with Jacoby back under center, which was big for him to lead him on a drive like this where it brings confidence back into himself in that locker room around him. Or if it's Drake Maye, we know that boost that they will get of if he's good to go and the high ceiling that he gives the offense. The Patriots picking out a win today, Jahmai, it impressed me because that Jets defense is really good, but they stepped up when they needed to, and they took advantage of another team that's bad opposite of them, and they pulled out a win. That's just what you want. It's the basics. It's the bare minimum of what you want to see from a football team. Jahmai, we finally saw that today from the Patriots because it's been 5 weeks of that being absolutely absent from New England overall.
Yeah, 100%. And so this team to answer the bell was a good sign because I think we talked about it earlier. You could have come back from these comments after a long trip to go across the pond and just fold it, but you responded not only to your coach, but to the public at large. Show that you're a team that's still willing to fight, a team that feels like they're still in it, something to play for. I thought that was big. And those are things that are winning habits. Those are things that get teams in a way where you can become one of the teams. And on any given Sunday, anybody can be beaten. So this was a beautiful thing to see from this Patriots team. And I feel like going into this week, I mean, the only thing that I'm concerned about, though, as I will mention, is it is potentially a week of preparation for Jacoby Brissett as he gets to prepare for this team. But the opposing view of that is now the Titans, they got some tape on him and they can also game plan around him because the Jets were not expecting to see Jacoby Brissett in this game at all, obviously. Drake Maye was knocked out, so it was necessary for him to come into the game. And without having that much maybe around the game plan about trying to stop Jacoby Brissett is why he was able to find some success. But he was able to make some big catches. I mean, some big throws, excuse me. And he was able to come through when the team needed, which is kind of the theme of this contest here.
It's all step up. Next guy up, we always hear it in the NFL. Well, the Patriots, they stepped up when they needed most. Hey, he's Jahmai Webster. I'm George Balekji. This was Foxboro Rush. Wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime, please like, subscribe, download, rate, and review. And go to Nesson's YouTube page, hit the subscribe button as well. As you know it, as always, new episodes of Foxboro Rush dropping every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll see you later this week. Have a good one, everyone.
Peace.